Start, Rakesh.
Good evening and warm welcome to all. We are grateful with your presence and for the trust put forth on us by attending in large number physically. This is the first DCICI physical event happening tonight after a gap of 21 months post the pandemic. During this period, we all had went through a life cycle which we never thought of in our dream. But with strong determination and adaptability, we are slowly, gradually moving towards normal. However, as we know, the pandemic is not yet over. Therefore, it is our responsibility. We should always follow the guideline as set by for our own safety as well as for others. As it is said, often when you think you are at the end of something, you are at the beginning of something else. There is a very famous poem written by Sri Harivansh Rai Bachchan, which speaks of never give up. I would like to share a few lines from it for the COVID warrior and for their contribution in fighting with this pandemic. रुके न तू, धनुष उठा प्रहार कर, तू सबसे पहले वार कर, अग्नि सी धधक धधक, हिरण सी सजग सजग, सिंह सी दहाड़ कर, शंख सी पुकार कर, रुके न तू, थके न तू, झुके न तू, थमे न तू, सदा चले थके न तू, रुके न तू, झुके न तू. With this, we also extend our warm welcome to all the new members who joined this year in DCICI family, and to our sponsors, chief guests, and the esteemed speaker in our today's event, which is Finnovation Summit on Innovation in Finance. And our learned speakers will be speaking on the first topic is value of valuation and value of asset, a perspective. And the second topic is changing landscape of compliance framework. Now, I would request all our members in welcoming our chapter chairperson, the ever smiling, the energetic, and the strong believer of engage, empower, enable, CA Nirlab Bhatt, with a thunder round of applause.
Good evening. Good evening. Am I audible to the last table? And if I'm audible to the members on the last table, can I request them to come on the front table, please? Respected chief guest of the evening, IBPC President, Mr. Jafar Sadiq, representatives from IBPC, if any, esteemed speakers who have joined us virtually, will be shortly joining, past chairpersons, guiding lights of the Doha chapter of ICI, DCICI members, EXCOM, and professionals who are watching us live on the YouTube. Warm good evening, third time. Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted and welcoming you all at this first physical event after nearly 21 months. To start with, I must ask all of you, how is the Josh?
Hi, sir.
Yeah, Josh is definitely high of mine as well as our EXCOM team, and that's the reason we all are here. Yeah. My felicitation, especially to all the new members for whom this may be the first ever event of the DCICI, and my salutations to all the past chairmen, because of whose mentorship and guidance I'm addressing you all as the chairman. Thank you, sirs. Friends, 2 years back, we had met, networked, signed attendance sheet, took snaps, had a dinner together. And as an EXCOM, at that time, we had arranged some of the tasks which is peculiar to physical events, like arrange parking slots, brought roll-up, visited venue to ensure all the arrangements for you. And then once in a lifetime pandemic, COVID-19 shook the world. And each one of us is impacted by it in one or other manner. And unfortunately, still it's not the past. But the question is not when it will be the past. The question is if it will be the past or not. So in this scenario, I must compliment and a sincere gratitude to all of you who have come here in a physical manner Let's give all of us a big round of applause. Today, no more virtual round of applause, no more emojis. It's a big round of applause. Yeah, few lines inspired by Rakesh. So they say that this year has been marked with the change. Some days feel good and others strange. We find ways to turn negatives into good and learn new skills that we never could. Things will get better because they usually do. Enjoy what you love and learn something new. We have learned to work differently and love more unconditionally. Don't forget to pray and always be kind. Try to stay positive and learn to unwind. And finally, the story is with a good win in the end. Prayers for my family and all my friends. Yeah. We must find ways to slowly get back to normal within permissible limit protocols, with precautionary approach, but more importantly, with positive framework, positive mindset. So with this, again, thank you very much to all of you. Innovation and constantly evolving business models, practices, conducts, regulations, goal setting are no more means to excel in the career or on a personal front, but they are the means to survive. Take startup, for example. A CA can be a startup founder, startup mentor, startup investor, startup guide. And with this thing in mind, we have a very special address from none other than CA PV Mohandas Pai, which will follow. Far away from traditional accounting and auditing, our practices are widening its scope. Our speaker, CA Guru Prasad, explained to me that how fundamentals of valuations are changing, how the asset itself is not a purely asset. So with that perspective in mind, we have selected this theme. Another very important aspect is the growing gamut of the compliance framework, especially with special reference to anti-money laundering measure and the combating terrorist financing. And who all knows it better than our companies, especially those who are into QFC. Friends, in November 2022, India is organizing World's Congress of Accountants. I would say as an Indian citizen, it's a matter of pride for all of us. And first time is being conducted in India, the event which is popularly known as the Olympic of Accountants. So I urge each one of you not to miss this opportunity to attend it. It will be from 18th to 21 November 2022. We have a video now from CA Prafulla Chhajar sir, Chairman of the Executive Committee of World Congress of Accountants, appointed by IFAC, and also a message from our ICA President, CA Nia Jammusaria sir. So can I request our chapter secretary who is attending this virtually, CA Vignesh, to please play the video.
Greetings from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. World Congress of Accountants is having a glorious history of more than 100 years. And this is an ecstatic moment for us in India that the Congress is being held for the first time in Mumbai, in our country. Mumbai is the city of dreams, a city that never sleeps, a city where one of the biggest film industries of the world is situated. On behalf of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, it gives me immense pleasure to invite you all to the 21st World Congress of Accountants 2022 from November 18 to 21, 2022 in Mumbai, in India. While we are fully prepared and happy to host the delegates from across the globe to the mystic world of India's rich culture and heritage, we are also providing tech platform for delegates who are not able to make it to this most prestigious global event of professional accountants. We are also providing an option to upgrade the registration of the delegates who registered for the virtual mode initially but later wished to attend the WCOA 2022 in person in view of the improved circumstances.
The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, under guidance of IFAC leadership, is fully geared up to welcome the delegates to the 21st World Congress of Accountants, which is scheduled from November 18 to 21st, 2022 in Mumbai, India. As the entire world is moving towards normalcy in a rapid manner, we are working to create a never before and a unique experience for all our delegates visiting India to attend World Congress. The Congress program is being developed keeping in mind the role of accountancy profession in creating a sustainable world and shall dwell upon professional enrichment in a contemporary and emerging areas. We are also taking into consideration different time zones while finalizing the event plan in such a way that it would be convenient for delegates from across the globe who wish to attend virtually. It is also a happy coincidence that the year 2022 is the 75th year of India's independence, and the Government of India is celebrating the year in a big way to showcase the glorious history of India. ICI is also working closely with the various government authorities, including Ministry of External Affairs. World Congress would also be celebrated as a mega event to showcase the important role that the accountancy profession has been playing in the economic and social development of various economies. India is a land of beautiful landscape, architecture, UNESCO World Heritage marvels, and amazingly vibrant amalgamation of cultures. We at ICI look forward to see you in great numbers in India, and together we will make it a great knowledge enriching experience. Namaste.
Indian hospitality has been recognized and praised across the globe. It is our tradition to honor the guest as God, Atithi Devo Bhavah. I must say that a unique and memorable experience with a touch of India's vibrant culture and diversity is waiting for you. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, C.A. Vignesh. And friends, I must tell you before we invite the Honorable Chief Guest that all the EXCOM has been working tirelessly behind it. It's the first time for us also. And some of the EXCOM members are new when this event has started, when the physical term was that they were not. But one EXCOM member deserves special credit, a big round of applause. He's the one who has visited venue twice, has ensured all the logistic arrangement, having a very sharp commercial acumen also, technological coordination also with CA Vignesh and CA Kamlesh. Help me giving the big round of applause, CA Rakesh Baheti. Just within first year of joining the EXCOM, clearly, CA Rakesh, you are making a difference. Great. Friends, now it's a time to introduce and invite the chief guest, Mr. Jafer Us-Sadiq, President of IBPC. I had an honor to meet him only a couple of times before this event, but I must tell you that with the energy, with the passion to serve, with the I would say the new flavor which is bringing to the whole organization, extremely important organization, having a very tight agenda on its card, but I'm sure just within the few months of his joining, he has already started making a difference. It's an honor to welcome you, sir. And DCICI is proud to be an associated organization of IBPC. Can I request C. Rakesh to give me?
Chairperson of Doha chapter of ICI, CA Mr. Nilab Bhatt, speakers for today joining us virtually, and professional members of the chapter and executive committee members. Good evening and assalamu alaikum to all. It's a privilege to be here and address you all on behalf of IBPC today evening. Good to see quite known faces, senior colleagues, Mr. Faridji, and we have Ms. Rupa Lakshmi Sethi. She's one of our IBPC EXCOM member. Doha chapter of ICAI is vibrant and active chapter and associated organization with IBPC. It is heartening to note that the Doha chapter of ICAI is growing year after year, adding many chartered accountants being a part of the organization. Chartered accountants are finance professionals who hold the key professions in making decisions in various organizations and are significantly contributing towards the economy of Qatar. IBPC has a new team, a new structure this year, and we look up to the finance professionals like you all to be a part of the vibrant team with IBPC and enhance Indo-Qatari trade and empower and become the platform to empower the Indian professionals and business councils here in Qatar. Innovation and financial services deem the happening of ever-increasing pace across the globe. Innovation is an inexhaustible engine for economic development be it startup or technology developments. Innovation is the key to it. It is great to see that XCOM has organized this first physical event after 21 months, even after a long interval of COVID restrictions. Together with IBBC and the chapter of Doha chapter of ICI, we'll continue to collaborate by organizing events, conferences, and knowledge sharing sessions for the benefit of the vibrant Indian community. With this, I wish the chapter all the very best and extend our full support as always from IBBC. Thank you very much.
After this, with pasture. Farid sir, please. George sir, Raju sir. Come. No, no, sir. We need a balance, sir. Come, come. Or Girish can come. He is always at one side. आप है तो आएगा. Thank you, Jafar sir, for this inspiring words, and I believe now it will be in a closer manner. We already have some events in plan which we just discussed, and hopefully we'll do it. Friends, we have been extremely honored now to had a time slot and the consent to deliver special address on India, a startup nation. And this will be from none other than pride of the profession, esteemed luminary. He is not there currently live, but he has sent us his address, which recorded address will play. And look at his rich introduction, I would say. Over a career spanning 37 years, Mohandas Pai has served in the areas of finance, accounting, human resource, education, corporate governance, social impact, philanthropy, and whatnot. He is the chairman of Aryan Capital, chairman of Manipal Global Education, member of the board of Havells India and the Institute of Public Enterprises, governing council member of the Center of Advanced Financial Research and Learning, promoted by RBI, chairman of the Regulatory and Financial Technology Committee of SEBI, and also the chairman of the SEBI Primary Market Advisory Committee. He was awarded the coveted Padma Shri by the President of India in 2015 and Karnataka Rajyotsav Award in 2008. He was previously a board member in the CFO of Infosys over a span of 17 years, an investment committee member of the SIDBI India Aspiration Fund and the INR 10,000 crore India Fund of Fund, and also board member of the SEBI. And also, more importantly, trustee of the IFRS Foundation. He is a fellow chartered accountant, I would say, but fellow member of the ICI with an All India rank holder, and he belongs to the profession to which we all proudly belongs. So when I was online with him, I was running short of my words to express the gratitude towards him for giving us a time slot of around 25 minutes. And then we recorded the presentation. I must tell you very honestly, this was my third attempt to invite him in the chapters event. It was not easy, but very grateful to Mohandas Spicer in absentia to have him. And with this presentation, which is quite resourceful and having a lot of research. So over to you, Vignesh. Could you please help us play that?
Folks, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak at the Doha chapter of ICAI. I learned that Doha chapter is the oldest amongst the 44 overseas chapters. And I want to give my best wishes to Nilay Bhatt, chairman of the chapter and team, for organizing the first physical event after 21 months. I know that COVID has been traumatic for most people, and for all of you to come together after 21 months is really a very big development. So when Nirlay asked me to come and talk to you, I was thinking what to talk, and I said, I'm going to talk about the future, not about the profession or the practice, about what is happening in India. Well, I do believe that India is undergoing a tremendous transformation. It's a very large country. Therefore, you don't see it on the ground in the physical building, in the infrastructure. But if you are in Bangalore, you see it very often. And I'll share you my excitement as you go along. So I said, I'll present to you India, a startup nation, how India is getting transformed to digital India. Next, please. We need to look at data globally to find out what is happening on the world. 250 years ago, an event took place which changed the world, and that was the Industrial Revolution. Till then, India, China made up the largest part of the global GDP because we are the largest number of skilled people, large exporters, large manufacturing, using human muscle and animal power. But then the West came up with the steam engine, which was invented in Great Britain, and that allowed them to overtake Asia. They also started colonization, sucking out the resources from Asia. They had capital by then because they had traded with South America. They looted the gold of the Incas and other civilizations there, and they had accumulated it. They also had trade with Asia because of Vasco da Gama and the trade route to the sea. So there was an explosion of growth in Europe. In 1800 to 1900, Europe dominated the world. Then came the world wars, and we saw what happened. The global order changed after 1945 when the World War ended. World War II ended. But that created the supply chain for the Industrial Revolution. And the West controlled the supply chain. Those who control the supply chain through shipping, through pipelines, through distribution, warehousing, retail, wholesale, financial services, control the world because you need a supply chain to connect with the customers all around the world. So the producers have to go through the supply chain, and supply chain today possibly makes more money than the producers. But that has changed about 20 years ago with the rise of the internet. And if you look at data today, out of 7.83 billion people on the planet, 5.5, maybe 6 billion, this old data, have a mobile phone, and 5 billion have internet connection. And that is unbelievable. We're all on the same platform. And through the internet, we can transact synchronously and asynchronously. And we get access to information. We get access to so much that the internet becomes the primary mode of contact between producers and consumers. And this can work 24/7 in any part of the world. All you need is a low-cost mobile device and a cheap data plan. And that's happened. Next, please. And the impact of that has been seen in the global marketplace. Or at the top 10 companies in the world by market value, 8 are digital companies. I know that now Microsoft is more than 2.5 billion, and Amazon is also crossed 2 billion. So there are more than 3 companies with 2 billion valuation. This is astonishing, right? We never heard of a company with $1 trillion valuation. Now there's $2 trillion, and it's totally astonishing. But look at the domination of the digital companies today. Next. The new normal is global tech conglomerates. We heard of conglomerates who control the world, like the oil companies and possibly the FMCG companies. But today is all about the global tech conglomerates, and they're their own system. Apple has an iOS system with 2 billion people. Alphabet has the Android system with 2.5 billion people, and Amazon has got its own system all around the world. And they're able to control the global economy because all of us are part of the system, and they shut out everybody else who is not in the system. And the system is controlled by them. They make money every time you transact, every time you do something. And this is very, very significant and very dangerous for all of us. Next. And this global tech business have become expansion monopolies because they have the power. And you may be surprised, and I'm sure you know about it though, that when you go to Google and search, Google tells you what it wants you to see, not what you want to see. So you can pay Google to show whatever you want to show, and Google does that. And that also means that as we, as they grow, all of us become a piece of data, and the data resides with them, and we lose control over our future. They know what we eat, what we do, what we see, what we like, and they start pushing goods and services to meet their needs. Next. And India too has done well, 1.39 billion people, 1.2 billion mobile devices, 1 billion unique numbers, 800 million people on the internet, and about 550 million people on social media. So India has become a digital nation in a short period of time, driven by Prime Minister Modi. You must admire Prime Minister Modi because in 2015, from the Red Fort, he said he will have a digital India, a startup India, and a stand-up India, and you see it all over the place. Next. And cost of data has plummeted because of Geo. You can see we have the lowest cost of data in the world, and the number of people on the internet is now gone to 800 million, and we consume 16.5 GB of data per user per month, which is very, very high, maybe in the top 5 in the world. Next. And you can see the time that people are spending, enormous amount of time. So we are now maybe 12 to 15% of global app downloads, and we also a app creator. So we are an app creator and an app user, and that is very unique because very few countries are app creators and app users. And we can see that e-commerce penetration is going up faster in India. It's going to change in India. It's going to impact India, but that, we can't stop the force of change. Next. There's been a rise in first-time shoppers and users because of COVID, and the data is here. Next. And you can see some more data about the internet economy, about YouTube proliferation, etc. This is just data. It's 1 year old, but the numbers will be much larger. I said I'll show it to you. That should show you the impact of the change. Next, please. So the startup ecosystem will create a $10 trillion economy in India. We thought by 2030, but now I think by 2031 and 2032, provided the dollar-rupee rate stays constant or doesn't move up too much. Next. We have 60,000 startups which created $400 billion of value, the third largest system in the world. For many of you, it may be a surprise. India is doing very well in the digital world. So don't believe the Indian media, don't believe all of them running fake narratives that growth is not happening, economy is not happening because they're all political agents. Don't believe all that nonsense. Because if you want to see the truth, come to Bangalore and you can see what is happening in India. And this $400 billion of value is very real. Next. This is built on top of the IT service industry. By 2025, we could have possibly $250 billion of revenue for exports. This year will be $170 billion. This is more than the oil export of Saudi Arabia. For a small part of the brain power that we export from India, we're earning more than the Saudi Arabian oil export, the largest in the world. The IT industry is what, 225 billion, maybe the largest industry in India. 5 million people are employed, and 500 to 600,000 people are going to get jobs this year in the IT industry alone. Of the top 10 software service companies by market value in the world, 5 are Indian. Of the top 5, 3 are Indian. Of the 2.8 million employees, the top 10, 2 million are Indians. And of the 6 million people in America in software, 1 million are Indians. Of the 5 million here, 2.5 million work for American companies. So out of the 8.5 million working for American companies, 3.5 million are Indians. 60% of global outsourcing for software comes to India. We dominate the world. And people ask some silly question, why India doesn't have a Google, Facebook, Apple? They forget that they all happened 30, 25 years ago. And 30, 25 years ago, we are a small economy. We have no capital. Today is very different. In 1991, India was 275 billion. And today we are 3 trillion. We've grown at 8.6% a year for the last 30 years. And that is tremendous growth. Population has grown at maybe 1.1% a year during that period, 1.6% a year during that period. So we've grown in real term by 7% in dollar terms. On top of that, we have the startup ecosystem. We have, like I said, by 2025, we'll have 100,000 startups employing 3.25 million people, as against 1.5 million now. And we'll have 200 unicorns. And between 2021 January to 2025 December, we'll have between 150 to 200 billion dollars being invested. If none of you invested in startups, I would urge you to look at it as an asset class, because the greatest growth in value is happening in startups right now in India. Next. Indians raised 70 billion capital from 24 to 2014 to 20, and out of which only 10% is Indian. And this year, 30 billion has come in. 25 billion, the figure we had 2 months ago, in the beginning of end of October. Now I'm told it's 30 billion, and this is tremendous. It's concentrated in Bangalore, Mumbai, Hyderabad. It's not all across India, in a few places. Next, please. India today has 81 unicorns. I think 82 today. 82 unicorns. 42 unicorns have happened this year in 11 months. So we'll be 200 unicorns by 2025. 42 unicorns. Show me one country where there have been 42 unicorns. The US has 500 unicorns. China maybe 250. India has about 82. So India is the third largest country, leaving behind Europe, leaving behind Japan, leaving behind everything else. And look at these companies. We know at least 10 companies here who could be unicorns in the next 6 months. Next. In the US too, Indians are creating unicorns out of 4.2 million. 67 unicorns have been created. Now it could be maybe 75. It is old data. I don't know how many unicorns you people have created in the Middle East. Maybe you should gather data and show that to everybody. Nirlep, I think it's important for you all to see how many of you are becoming entrepreneurs in the Middle East, and how can you get those unicorns in the Middle East and make a lot more money. Next. And this old data, of course, Paytm today is still 15 billion. And I think PhonePe has gone up, Zoho has gone up, Oyo is doing an IPO. And the India's 10 most valuable unicorns are worth 150 billion. Nykaa is not in the list. We have to update this list. Next. This is old data. Today, we have 42 unicorns. By November end of 37. So we had 5 more in the last last week of November and now. And you can see the unicorn list here. Because every day you open a paper, you have a new unicorn. And some of them you have not heard of. Even for us, it is something unbelievable. Next. Out of $400 billion, expect to be $1 trillion by 2025. By 2025, the listed companies, including startup and service companies, could be $1 trillion. So by 2025, we could be creating $2 trillion of digital value. And I think this is fantastic. Next. And it's across all industries, enterprise tech. Look at all the areas: customer service software, retail tech, Salesforce automation, finance accounting, business intelligence. This is all for enterprises. And we got many good companies, as we can see later. Next. For example, here, Darwinbox is one of the best in the world in HR. Maybe you people should talk to them to see how you can use them. They got more than 700 customers. In HR SaaS cloud, they are better than SAP and Oracle. Open is the world's largest MSME neobank in the world. They're getting 150,000 MSMEs coming on the portal every month now. And they got about 1.6 billion MSMEs already. Next. You got deep tech. This is old data, but a lot more have come by then. In IoT, in 3D printing, in smart homes, in AI, etc. Next. Some of the deep tech companies, for example, Dosi by March will have 10,000 beds under which there will be a mat with IoT devices which will capture the 5 vital signals of the human body, like breathing, blood pressure, heartbeat, etc., and transmit the data to a mobile device so a doctor knows every few minutes how a patient is doing somewhere, so that every bed can be made into an ICU. This is unbelievable innovation. Next. India is growing as the deep tech hub, startups in AI, IoT. If anybody tells you, oh, what about IoT, what about things, tell them there are a lot there. They're small. You must remember, people like to compare us to the US, but the US is a $22 trillion economy. We are just 3 trillion. Despite being a small economy, we have so much. Next. And tech solutions are digitally upskilling millions of employees. Jobs are being created. 1 crore jobs are being created in India every year. The data is there in the EPFO and ESI figures. Somebody cares to see them. Next. Active venture capitalists. We have large number from outside India. Indians are now investing too. We have more than 650 AIFs with more than 5 lakh crore of corpus. And every year, this is going up by 25, $30 billion. So you can imagine the kind of scale that's happening in this country. Next. India will go from a data poor to data rich by 2025. We're already more than halfway there. And it's very exciting because when you have a lot of data like India does, you're going to have AI and machine intelligence running on them to do exciting things, finding out patterns and discovering new areas of industrial growth. Next, please. Leap in data. This shows you how much time people are spending, how it has grown in education, mobile payments. In mobile payments, we had 4.2 billion transactions. And last month we did, for the second time, more than 100 billion amount of transactions. And like Prime Minister Modi said recently, the UPI transactions are more than the ATM cash withdrawals every month. Next. Steady transition, you can see here, this October, even in November, we had more than 100 billion and 4.2 billion transactions because November had 1 day less than October. And 1 day makes a big difference. Next. There are now neobanks coming. Neobank are apps sitting on top of a bank account, so you can work on multiple bank accounts. You can create records of all the transactions. You can do the account. You can do so many things that could be done. You see, the issue in banking is banking software was designed for the regulator to get information. Banking software was designed for the bankers to get a view of what they want. It is not designed for the users. When you and I as users go to a bank and use their app, it's difficult for us to navigate, get everything. So a layer of neobanks are coming, sitting on top of the bank software, and that is allowing all of us to intuitively do banking transactions, consolidate all the bank accounts, move the money between the bank accounts easily, make the payroll, and generally do all the transactions that we do with the bank seamlessly without having to interact with the banks. This is exciting, and this will change the way the banking is done, and these companies will have more control. Next. And you can see the online content, how it's growing. You know, there's a time that the amount of number of people who spend time watching video, watching vlogs, listening to music, etc. Well, Indians have a lot of time. I do agree. Indians have surplus time, but nevertheless, look at this assimilation of technology. Next. Content consumption explodes to COVID, this whole data. It just shows you how things have changed. Next. Gaming. India is a large gaming market. And why is gaming interesting? Because globally, what is happening in gaming? Gaming is creating its own ecosystem in the metaverse. The metaverse is a place where virtual reality and reality merge together. The virtual world and the real world come together. So you interact with somebody, you'll have your own avatar, you'll have a digital twin doing all kinds of things. And you can spend all your time on that and create a whole new world. You can have buildings, you can buy and sell, you can play games, you can earn money, you can create currency. And that is creating its own banking system and its own new world. That's why Facebook changed its name to Meta. And I think the metaverse is something incredible. It can be good for society and bad for society, but it's an entirely new world of doing things. And that could be a parallel world, and we don't know what the implications are. But for that, gaming and gamers are at the forefront, and you can see the number of gaming companies in India. Next. You'll be surprised that more hours are streamed watching people play games than playing games themselves on Twitch, for instance. And in India, we have Loco, which is an aggregator of all the games, which has done extremely well and grown very, very rapidly. So you're seeing this kind of extreme innovation coming up in India. Next. Then in EdTech companies, you can see how EdTechs are altered. Byju has got 7 million subscribers. Byju is worth 18 billion. My fund, Adding Capital, gave them the first check of 9 million and 20 million pre in 2012. Now we got 5 unicorns. And you can see them across the board. More than 4,400 EdTech companies are there, out of which 250 are doing reasonably well. But this is the way education is going to change. So we are not going to have a fully online education for children. It's not going to work because children have to grow up. They need a physical world. But definitely the virtual world and the internet is going to play a big role in education in future. Next. Healthcare. There's e-pharmacy companies. Pharmacy is becoming a $5 billion company trying to do an IPO, telemedicine, diagnostic and care, health and fitness. A lot of things happening all over the place. And I think it's exciting because healthcare will reduce costs. All the digital companies reduce costs, increase. You'll be surprised that research says only 35% of the time a super specialist is used every day. And by using technology, if their time utilization goes up to 65, 70%, look at the benefit. Many people could get consulting with the top specialists on the world. Next. And this is important for our change because the internet is only 20 years old and it's changed the world. And now in the next 10 years, we're going to see 4x to 5x the change that we saw in the last 20 years. And it's happening because of the speed of technology assimilation. I think this is extremely important. And you can see the speed of change. Arogya Setu took just 13 days to get 50 million users, whereas Pokemon took 19 days and Twitter took 2 years, right? Now you could get 50 million, 100 million, maybe 15 days. That means the speed of change is accelerated and that's fantastic. Next. India is having a national health stack created by volunteers along with government. And here we're going to have the data of 500 million Indians. Already 250 million Indians have joined. 22 million, 2.2 crore Indians have got medical relief to hospitalization under Prime Minister Modi's Ayushman Bharat case. So a lot of things are happening on a big scale, on a scale never seen before in the world. This platform will be the largest in the world. Next. E-groceries are growing well. You can see all these companies, more and more unicorns will come up. Next. E-grocery is doing big business. COVID was an inflection year because people got their groceries by an app. People got the entertainment by an app, did the banking by an app. Children got education through an app. We got a health through an app. Everything went through an app. And we're logged in. And suddenly we found that we could interact with the world and get most things done without going outside. And that is a revelation. Next. And clean mobility options are coming. The future is going to be the age of EV. For example, this year, India will sell more than 100,000 two-wheelers. India sells 22 million two-wheelers a year. And by 2025, maybe 65% of all two-wheelers will be electric. And this is tremendous. We have Ather, a ground-up vehicle. We'll have Ola. We'll have Yulu, which is using this all across Bangalore. And they're using machine learning and AI to create networks to make sure that, people can use it and optimize the use, because optimization will be the key. Next. So thank you very much. And I want to end my talk by saying India is changing rapidly. Digitization has taken place in a very scale never seen before. And the changes are coming. And the changes are very evident all across India. And Bangalore has 30,000 IT companies, 10,000 startups. Bangalore has 45 unicorns. And Bangalore is getting this year $15 to $16 billion of capital for a city of just 11 million people. So if you come to Bangalore, you see things happening. You go to Ahmedabad, you may see a little bit. You go to Delhi, you may see a little bit. But you've got to be concentrated in a place like Bangalore. And India is changing very, very rapidly. Thank you very much. I'll be very happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, CA Mohandas Pai, and that was definitely a very, very insightful session. This was, well, an innovation in itself, where we had to look at how we can have such a good speaker speak to us with all these restrictions that we have currently. Though we tried, as Nirlep said in the past, to have him here, but thanks to COVID, we could not make it. But I think this was something where we managed to do it, and we had his recording on. I know we could not take any questions, but I'm sure that we'll have him very soon here physically, and probably then we'll have we'll have loads of questions, I'm sure, for CA Mohandas Pai. I now move on to the next session, and I invite our chapter treasurer, CA Kamlesh, to introduce the next speaker and take it forward. Over to you, Kamlesh.
Thank you, CA Vignesh. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Thank you once again. It's warm good evening to all the members who are physically present there in Radisson. It's indeed a proud privilege for us to be hosting this event physically. And it's a privilege once again to introduce our next speaker for this session, CA Guru Prasad. CA Guru Prasad is founder of Guru and Jana, a chartered accountancy firm, and which holds the distinction of filing tax returns on the 1st of April, paperless and lockless CA office. And for this, they have received leadership awards from the Accounting Bulletin Awards. He is the founder of Guru and Jana. He is also founder of social responsibility advisory firm Vardhan, a SEBI-registered angel investment fund Pathway, and also partner of a firm, corporate law and accounting function firm, Abarna and Ananthan. He is an independent director in over 10 companies, past trustee of IIM and Alumni Trust, IIMB Alumni Trust, sorry for that. And he's a member of peer review board, QRB and FRRB. The list is endless. I would not delve much and allow him to speak. He's going to speak on value of valuation and valuation of assets. With this, I request all of you to welcome CA Guru Prasad with a loud round of applause.
Thank you.
Before I hand over to sir, sorry for that, just a procedural thing. Time permitting, at the end of his session, we will have 1 or 2 questions. And for that, we will request the member who is asking the question to come onto the dais and ask the question in front of the podium so that it's audible to Guru Prasad, sir. That's it. Now, sir, the virtual floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And pleasure to be here. And it's beautiful that we are sitting in Bangalore and my colleague Akila is sitting in Hyderabad. And we are able to access people in Qatar. And I don't know whether Kamlesh ji is in Qatar. He may be staying in some other country. And this entire COVID has been a revelation because I used to, for a 20-minute session, I have traveled to Malaysia. And after traveling for a 20-minute session or a 30-minute session, I wonder, my God, why did I travel to Malaysia for 30 minutes? So with this background, Akila is a specialist in valuation. I just would like to introduce her. She would be helping me run through the slides and also taking a few slides. Akila heads our Hyderabad operations and she has done well. In fact, the previous talk of Mr. Mohandas Pai, I was so happy when I was seeing all those icons, Dunzo, Practo, Swiggy, Big Basket, and hundreds and hundreds of them. And I was so happy that we were doing work for many of them. And invariably, as he was telling, if you're practicing in Bangalore, and if you are in the profession or if you are working in an organization, 50% of the work comes only from India Entry Services, people coming from US, UK, Germany. So what we would like to do is we'll spend around 20 minutes or 25 minutes because it's quite late in India and I traveled 800 kilometers by the road to reach today on time. So we will try to take 20-25 minutes and keep 3-4 minutes for questions. Akila, next slide, please. And we are going to talk mostly about valuation. What do you mean by valuation? And obviously, all of you are finance professionals. You must be working in consulting engagements there or finance professionals. You may know about valuation, but we'll try to present the different aspects of valuation, how it has traveled over the period. And the way India is growing, valuation is also changing. When I started my startup ecosystem practice, this was around 10 years ago, we started a separate activity for startups, and to get a valuation of $3 million was something enormous. That used to be a talking point in the office. They got $3 million. Today, we don't have a single day where we don't issue a valuation certificate, and some certificates are $2 billion enterprise valuation, $4 billion. Of course, some are still $1 million, their seed capital. So that was a happy sign. And Akila, next one, please. And over the time, what we have done is we have broken up the slides to two parts. Something which does not go too much technical, I will not delve into. Something when it goes too technical, Akila will take up. Even I was doing valuation for close to 7 years, but now I have not done valuation for 3 years almost. So asset, the definition of asset itself has changed over the period. We used to still think, I still remember when people used to tell in South India, I'm from South India, and they tell, unless my name is in the sub-registrar's office, where the land is registered in my name, I don't feel like a owner. So today ownership itself has changed. The value of asset itself has changed. Take examples of we used to call asset as a sovereign bond or a gold or a building used to be an asset. Now things have become extremely different. If you look at any of the prime assets or the subprime assets, what they did is they just took a bank balance sheet and told, okay, the bank has given 100 home loans, another bank has given 500 home loans, bank C has given 600 home loans. We'll club this 100, 500 and 600, club it together, and we'll call it a single asset. And we'll trade on this asset and sell it to somebody. So all of a sudden, an asset came through consolidation of home loans. If you look at the Nifty index in India or anywhere in the world, I don't know what is the index in Qatar, though I have traveled to Qatar a few times, but I've never got out of the airport. I just had to get into the airport and move out. The new airport is nice, though. The earlier one was a little tougher. The new is very pretty. So if you look at the Nifties also is just a combination of tens and tens of shares. So they just took shares like Reliance, the Tatas, the Hindustan Levers of the world, clubbed all those and told, okay, this makes a Nifty index. Now we have many asset classes only in indexes. Now, if you take issues like cryptocurrency, now cryptocurrency is only a currency where you can exchange. But in cryptocurrency, we have different currencies. One could be a Bitcoin, one could be a Dash. So there are many, many currencies like that. And each of the currencies itself are valued in a different pedestal. So we don't know what all is coming. So asset is changing, the name of the asset is changing. I was in US and speaking to a valuation expert, and we were telling, okay, this is the valuation we do in India. And this guy came back and told, we do valuation of legal cases. Asking him, what is this legal cases you guys are doing? So like person A has put a case on a corporate B. Person A has put a case on corporate B, and these guys have gone ahead and put a case for some $10 million. But person A does not have money for doing anything. Person A hardly has got any money for winning a case or hiring a lawyer or doing something like that. So what happens is there would be venture funders who want to fund the legal fees of person A. So the legal fees could be $500,000 for a 10 million suit. So they'll tell, okay, if the legal fee is $500,000, you don't have any money, but you are the person who has put the case, you are the plaintiff. And they study the case and they feel the plaintiff has got a value and they invest the $500,000. And when they invest the $500,000, they hedge, telling that, okay, if the outcome is $2 million, you pay me $1 million and you take $1 million. So a legal case has become a valuation asset. Like that, options have become valuation assets. Rights are becoming valuation assets. Today, data is becoming valuation assets. Now take a company like Dunzo, take a company like Paytm. Their data is invaluable. Customer loyalty is becoming a valuation asset. So we never seen this as, generally we feel all these are intangible assets, and in many cases they don't even qualify as intangible assets. Health could be a tangible asset. Whose is going to be the loss, whose is going to be the gain, we don't know. As I was talking to you, the legality of the cases. And carbon credits has become asset. Who is going to take care of the nature? Time and efforts in the case of AI automation. So an AI will come and tell, I could do a general ledger reconciliation or a contract review in 30 seconds, while you are going to take 3 hours as a human being to do it. So can I value that asset? So we don't know what all is becoming an asset. If you go back to the previous slide till now, the building has come into data. The brand intangible asset used to be just a brand, but today everything has got changed. Akila, you can go there only. I'm okay. So it has become rights, data, loyalty, health, legality, nature, so on and so forth. Tomorrow, I would not be surprised. People are issuing insurance policies where a very beautiful actress's smile is involved or a body is involved. They get insurance policies. We don't know what all valuation will come. Today, it's called underwriting. Tomorrow, whether it's going to step into valuation, we're not aware. Next one, Akila. So these slides were already dealt with by Mohandas ji. Fortunately, I have met him a few times, so it's beautiful to meet this gentleman. Highly energetic. Any time of the night, he's so energetic. I wrote a book called God in the Boardroom. That means what is the value systems in the boardroom, and he was featured in this book. So he gave me an interview time at 9 o'clock in the night, and that pushed to 10. I was feeling hungry. They provided food, but you should have seen this gentleman's energy at 10. God was kind that went on to become a national bestseller. I just thought of telling it because Mohandas Pai was the previous speaker. He has already spoken how the 1996, 2000, 2004, 2009, and 14, everything was changing. Apple is becoming, the tech companies are going to roll the roost. The Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, and these are the guys who are going to overtake any of them. If you look at this, there has been a tremendous shift in the value of these things. I'll just take the bottom part of it. Akila will take the upper part of it. If you look at the Enron debacle happened, the entire financial world was in deep trouble. Arthur Andersen almost collapsed at Enron. And at that time, US got in socks. And if you go back and measure everything, when Lehman happened, when the prime assets and subprime assets happened, they came back and told everything has to be fair value measurements, and they bought in IFRS. Now, emergence of intangibles, India got in a whole lot of assets. So if you keep on seeing these type of assets, the accounting standards, it has also kept on changing. Now IFAC is coming with new standards. So as and when a scam happened, Lehman happened, SOX came, Enron happened, SOX came, Lehman happened, fair value came, emergence of intangible assets came in, and one or two more issues happened. IFAC is already looking at risk as a huge amount of change in the financial statement. So why is this important? Every time the financial statements change, the cash flows change. Because if my asset is different, my depreciation is different, my EBITDA is different, my cash flow inverts is changing. So too many changes happen. And again, there would be period changes. In 1 year, when I'm doing valuation, if it is an Indian company, it is not coming under IFRS. The previous year is in the Indian camp. Next year, they cross the turnover, it goes into IFRS. So I'm comparing a balance sheet of 1 year of IFRS and 1 year of Indian cap. So things could become quite complex when we do valuation. Akila, can you please take it up from here?
Yes,
I'll
Guru.
pick in wherever I require.
Sure. Thank you, Guru. I would like to step back few slides and cover few aspects here. While Guru was explaining how assets have changed over period, I think one narrative we have to, underline and understand is that valuation is relative. In earlier periods where sovereign bonds, gold, and real estate were considered as investment avenues, PPF and government bonds, these were I think these were the early stage investment instruments. Gradually, new investment avenues like stock market and forex exchanges came into picture, and over the period, the risk assessment and return expectations have changed from investor perspective. And once where sovereign bonds, gold, and real estate, these were considered to be high return investments, now they are treated as risk neutral or maybe risk-free investments. So one underlying aspect here is that value is always relative. So value of an asset depends on what other investment opportunities are available to the investor at a particular point of time, and what is the return expectation and risk assessment of the investor at that point of time. And gradually, if we see here, another narrative that is emerging is, even if we observe the companies which are occupying the largest market cap position in the world over last 3 decades, we can see that in early 90s, companies like GE, Shell, which had more tangible assets, more sustainable revenue and immediate profits, these were occupying the top positions in terms of large market cap and also investor trust. Gradually, this has changed towards technology and companies like Apple, Google, and Microsoft, which are heavily dependent on innovation. And specifically for these companies, the net worth is not
Sorry,
tangible.
Akila. Sorry, Akila, I don't see you. Is the camera on? I'm not sure, but whether my screen is something like that, I don't see you.
My camera is on, Guru.
Okay, go ahead.
I think your camera is off. It's not yet on. That's why.
Yeah. Can you check out Akila? I used to see it earlier. You're looking nice in the yellow top, but I don't see you now.
Okay, somehow it's showing as on to me.
Do you want to log out and log in?
Yes, Guru, I'll try.
Do try that, please. So when we used to do valuation as a initial exercises, I never could fathom the idea that valuation would become such a big science. And earlier it used to be just an audit client I used to get back and do valuation. But today, valuation is such a huge stream. And I'm sure many of you are chartered accountants from India. Some of you may be chartered accountants from Pakistan. Some of you may be from Bangladesh and Dubai. Many of our subcontinent countries have set up registered valuers, sort of a statutory body. And valuation is itself becoming a separate subject by itself. So that could take a huge amount of toll on businesses, because as soon as valuation comes in, the money also expands automatically. It is not just a valuation practice which happens. Akila, we are able to see you now. You could try on you could share the screen. I was just chatting generally till you came in. You can continue.
Yeah. So here we can observe that in early 90s, companies like GE and Shell, which are heavily capital intensive, where the value can be easily assessed from the balance sheet in terms of tangible assets, and where revenue and margins were immediate and sustainable. These were occupying the top position in terms of market cap and investor trust. Gradually, this narrative started shifting in 2000, wherein a dot-com bubble or technology emergence came in. Companies like Microsoft and Cisco, which are in spaces like technology and telecom, these started occupying the top position in terms of market cap and investor trust again. However, it took almost a decade for technology narrative to establish. In between, affected slightly because of financial crisis and recession. However, by 2014, we can note that 3 out of 5 companies in a large market cap category are occupied by companies which are heavily into innovation and technology. So Apple is completely dependent on brand again, which is a new age asset, which Guru was explaining in the previous slide. Google and Microsoft, these are into data and artificial intelligence and automation, which are again new age assets, which we discussed in the previous slide. So one more striking difference in terms of revenue and profitability to the companies that are in large market cap segment in 2014 in comparison to 1996 is that the value can be easily assessed from the balance sheet or financial statements for a company like GE or Shell. But for a company like Apple and Google, the valuation metrics itself have changed, and which will be discussed in the which we'll be discussing in the next slides. And if we look at today's position, we can see that almost all the companies that are topping the market cap chart, these are heavily data dependent, innovation dependent, and non-tangible asset dependent companies. And we can very easily note that PE multiple is no longer the metric of valuation, which was earlier in the case of GE or Shell. And just giving another perspective to this financial reporting angle. So as the assets and business models mature, we should also understand that the financial reporting is trying to match the valuation requirements or investor expectation. For example, SOX improved the financial statement reliability in the periods of, when we were talking about early 2000 periods where investors were more dependent on revenue and asset metrics to determine the value, SOX added maybe investor reliability on financial statements. Whereas as companies like Microsoft, Google, and Apple came into picture, fair value measurement, intangible valuation, these became more relevant. And now as we see that the business models are ever changing, the financial reporting requirements will try to align. And as a professional, we should understand and match our capabilities to assess the value.
So,
And-
Akila, I take this. We will have to move to the technical part a little sooner because I think we have another 10 minutes left. Now, if you look at these parts of it, actually there is no asset at all. Airbnb, neither they have a building, Uber, neither they have a car. So like that, most of them are cash burn businesses. I was sitting in one of the board meetings and the investor had to pump in around 1,300 crores Indian rupees. And that's a huge, huge sum of money. And they were almost planning to burn the money within a period of 4 months. If in the earlier world, they could have possibly built 4 bridges out of it. 1,300 crore of rupees is a huge amount of money. So the cash burn model is becoming a totally different model today. I think Akila in the next slide will explain a little more on how things are changing, and she will give you practical examples of the Indian example.
Yeah. So in this slide, we are seeing actual valuation metrics of 4 companies which got
Akila,
this.
I can just pitch in. If any of you are following the Indian stock market, the 4 companies what Akila has picked up is Zomato, Nykaa, Paytm, and Star Health. Zomato is the guy who supplies eatables. If I want a idli or a dosa, I call up a Zomato. Nykaa is a fashion brand. It can vary from a nail polish to anything. Paytm is just a payment gateway, and Star Health is just an insurance company. There is no rocket science in any of this company. No artificial intelligence, no high-grade intelligence. These are simple companies, but look at the valuations here.
So Zomato was the first internet company in India to be listed. And obviously it had the first mover benefit, both in terms of competition and both and in terms of first mover advantage in terms of IPO also. So Zomato and Nykaa had seen very significant traction. They were oversubscribed by up to 80 times in terms of Nykaa and 38 times in terms of for Zomato. And Zomato's valuation IPO valuation moved up by almost 60% in comparison to last PE round value. And for Nykaa, it is almost like 10x or 100x of last round valuation, wherein last round valuation was not even published properly. And we can also see that listing gains for both the companies were very high, 50% and 78%. Analysts gave very positive reviews to both Nykaa and Zomato, saying that growth possibilities for these companies are very high. And that's why the valuation is, justifiable. However, one thing which maybe at that time retail investors also missed noting is that growth comes with customer acquisition cost and investment into innovation. And if we see the case of Nykaa, almost 12%, only 12% of the IPO funds were going to the company, and balance 88% were towards offer for sale. And if company is not going to the company, money is not going to the company, how is this perceived growth going to be achieved? That was not analyzed. So after experience of Zomato and Nykaa, market and investors became wary, and this became evident in case of Paytm and Star Health. Paytm was supposed to be the largest IPO in India. However, in terms of traction, it didn't. Maybe it didn't reach the expectation. It was only subscribed 1.89 times, and also the valuation after the IPO, it reached the pre-IPO PE valuation level. And in terms of Star Health, it was even lesser. IPO got subscribed only up to 70% of the times, and it didn't even get the expected value. So what are the lessons learned in terms of valuation when we take example of these 4 companies? PE valuations are mostly comparative valuations wherein funds try to invest in companies just to ensure that they are in the game and competition is being maintained. However, PE valuations may not always work for public markets, and actual valuation will establish only after growth is achieved, and that is after investment of customer acquisition cost and innovation investment. And one point that is to be noted is market will always correct itself, and that has been proved in case of Paytm and Star Health. And even for Zomato and Nykaa, whether the valuation is realistic, or it's just a bubble, that will be established only after anchor investors start liquidating their share in the market. And as on today, we don't have any realistic benchmarks, even in global markets, to see whether PE market will sustain in long term. PE valuations will sustain in long term. So there is this famous saying for investment that thinking this time is different is most dangerous thing. And this applies to valuation also. No matters how business model change and how valuation metrics change, the core of valuation still remains cash flow. And as a professional, we should try to ensure that in today's time, whatever valuation method we follow, we are trying to assess the cash flow possibility in a realistic manner. And that is the core principle of valuation. So when it comes to income approach to based valuation, we all know very clearly that it is mainly dependent on three metrics: cash flows, discount rate, and terminal value. In case of a traditional business model, it is very easy to project cash flows and also determine discounting rates, because there is a lot of historical data available, and there is a lot of precedence in terms of competitive benchmarking for discount rates. However, when it comes to new age companies and new age business models, it may be very difficult to assess the cash flows also, because business models keep pivoting day by day. And in terms of discount rate, we always face face problems in terms of determining beta and comparative equity risk premium. However, we should try addressing these gaps by adopting new age analysis, new age analytical techniques. For example, cash flows can be assessed by considering by breaking down the market size and understanding how much customer acquisition cost it will take to acquire the market and retain the market in terms of customer lifetime value. And when it comes to discounting, instead of going with traditional routes of beta and CAPM, we can adopt IRR benchmarking, wherein we have to, depend on databases wherein VC and PE return expectations can be understood. And recently there has been a trend of this investor return survey. We can also rely on that for determining discount rates. And when it comes to terminal value, I think in case of startups and new age business models, determining terminal value based on exit multiples will be the most reliable approach. And when it comes to market approach, earlier also we have seen that in case of GE and companies with traditional business models, metrics like EV by book value or EV EBITDA, EV revenue, these were heavily used. One underlining fact is that using these traditional multiples on companies like Zomato or Nykaa, that may not be completely correct, because the asset for Nykaa and Zomato is completely different from an asset for G and Shell. So instead of going with traditional book value, we have to depend on customer equity or customer lifetime value. And instead of EV EBITDA comparison, we can take EV by customer margin and EV by annual recurring revenue. And one more important factor that we need to consider here is discount for lack of control and marketability. In all the recent IPOs or all the recent startups which got listed in the public markets, one factor which we could note is that promoter holding in those companies is very low compared to traditional business model. So the illiquidity in terms of marketability and lack of control, that will be more prominent for these business models. So we should be careful in considering appropriate discount for lack of marketability and control when it comes to startup valuations. And we can also follow scorecard approaches when we are comparing within industries and across industries. Along with this, there are new levers of value when it comes to new age business models. Since cash burn and runway are new terms of or new metrics of investment generation capability itself is more valuable than income generation capability. Your value depends on how far you can go to Series B, Series C, Series D, and how can you gain investor trust in each series. And there is some Guru already discussed on arbitration value with increasing structural ambiguity in new business models. Businesses can be acquired even by paying a legal fee. And liquidity event horizon and liquidation preference, these are more relevant for PE and VC funded startup valuations. Value will tend to increase when startup start reaching the liquidity event position. And even though even though VC and PE say that they are investing in equity, but we have to understand that is quasi-equity coming with a liquidation preference. So even the liquidation preference factor has to be addressed in the valuation.
So I'll have to wrap it up a little more faster because I would like to at least have one or two questions, and we would be happy to answer those questions. And as I told, Akila has been doing valuations for over a decade, and in this one decade, we have seen so many changes. The changes have been innumerable. Something like a Zomato is getting valued almost something which is unbelievable. It is much more than 5 times more than the Tata Motors. But again, as Mr. Mohandas Pai was telling, Arogya Setu or a UPI sort of a thing, if it is turned up to valuation, because that is never a game in a socialistic economy, it is purely a government initiative which became so much more successful. If you want to use it purely in terms of numbers, I think Arogya Setu would be 10 times more than Zomato. So if that has to be spun off into a valuation and the type of data, what is there in Arogya Setu, which came in without any brand spend, without any communication, and it just spread like wildfire. I still remember the first time when Google or when a WhatsApp payment schedule or a Paytm or a PayU came to India, and it looks so strange. How do you make a payment through this? But many of you, when you visit India, you will obviously make a notice that recently we had to get a janitor to come to clean our toilets. And I was in the office, only my house help was sitting at home. And this guy, I gave him a location in a Google WhatsApp, in a Google Pin. And he just, uneducated man coming to clean the toilets here, he just would send me the Google Pin. And once he was done, I was not sure how do I pay him. He was telling, sir, Google Pay kar do. And that is the way UPI has spent. And I have not seen personally myself carrying cash for the past 5 years, 5 months. I have not even seen cash. Akila, next one, please. I think, thank you for the opportunity. You can put off the screens, put off the slide share, and we will wait for Mr. Vignesh to call out for any questions. And in case there are any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. And before I hand it over to the compeers to take us through the questions, what is in it for somebody who is hearing in Qatar? What is the use of valuation? In case you are not in the consulting space, one, yeah, it's a good space to be in. It's an extremely profitable space to be in. And point number two, in case any of you are investing, specifically in the Indian subcontinent, it could be Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, any of these countries, investment, most of the valuation methodologies are the same. Because we've been doing valuations in all these 4 countries, valuation methodologies are extremely same. And market is very same. Of course, the value of money India attracts is so huge today. Things like getting invested $40 million to $60 million is becoming a talk of every day. We just feel, okay, morning $60 million came, afternoon $80 million came. So we have forgotten about the 60. So it's a good space to be in investing in startups, especially if you're working in the Gulf and you want to come back to India or you want to invest in India. It's a pretty good space. You need to know a little about valuation when you need to do that. We'll be waiting for your questions, and after that, we could go back to bed. It's almost touching 10:30 in India.
I request members, if there is any question, they can come down on the dais and please come here.
Oh, this is so unique. Somebody is coming to the dais. We are sitting in some place.
This
We have
is
done
innovation,
webinars.
sir.
We have done hundreds of webinars, but I have not done a live and a webinar one.
This is innovation, sir.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you, Mr. Guru. It was a insightful session. I just wanted to ask a simple question. I'm sure a lot of startup is already working, and inspired by that, I'm also working on some startup on very low level. So I need your help on how to make a startup pitch, because I literally don't have any idea, and I tried to do the Google, but I didn't find much information on that.
So I would be definitely able to help you, because practically we work with every investor in the country. Whoever comes to India, generally we work with them. I'll take a small detour here. There was one startup who was working in the medical field, and that startup was putting up an app for medicines, and they wanted some money. And at that stage, I told, okay, fair enough. I would like to give you 500,000 rupees. In India, we call it as 5 lakh rupees. I'll give you 500,000 rupees, but I want interest back. And after some 12 months, I felt a little jittery. I could have as well left the 500,000 go. It's not a big sum of money for any of us. Somehow I got jittery and took the money back. He gave me the money with 90,000 rupees interest. If I had got that 500,000 today, it would have become 18 crores. So startup valuation and startup pitch is becoming extremely important. Earlier days were days where you had to go through an investment banker, and an investment banker will take you to a VC or a PE or an angel investor. And those days, to make a pitch document was very, very important. The quality of your pitch document, what are the parameters, how are you going to explain, how will you grow the company, what is your risk potency, that would have been what is your team. And it used sometimes the investor meetings used to take tons and tons of time. This time I'll take another practical example. Last week we were in a call, and one of the largest companies abroad were investing in an Indian company. It was 22 minutes or 23 minutes down the line. The valuation went from $130 million to $180 million, and they accepted $180 million. In 22 minutes, they accepted $50 million difference in valuation. So coming to your answer, the old methodology of a pitch document, making it nice, going and pitching to VCs, that is running the steam out. Because a VC is practically getting up to 150 to 200 proposals per day, per week. So he does not have the time to go through anything. So today's pitch documents are hardly a small business idea which can get structured in half a page of communication. And half a page of communication is the most ideal to do. The second way you could do is go to the VC's Ps. There are not many of them. They're not even really active ones, not even 150 in India. See their portfolio companies. All their portfolio companies are in the website. And if their portfolio companies are in the website and they have invested in similar companies, don't even pitch for them. It's a waste of time. Pitch only to those companies who are there. That is the second thing what you should do. And the third thing what you should do is, what is the pitch cycle? Suppose a company is telling, okay, I have raised this fund in the month of 2021 December, and their fund is going to close in 2026 December. That means in 5 years, they're going to close down. So if you go to a fund in 2022, they still have 4 years, they'll wait. So if the fund cycle is about to close down, and if your thing is getting into the last pitch, go to those companies, concentrate there, send a short email. Nothing more than a short email, or you can just go to their website and post. Don't do any fancy things. Stick to the basics, and you will get it cleared. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, yes, very much. Very much. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Yes, there is one.
No question here, but just to thank Guru sir, Nirlep this side, and
Hey,
we
how
all
are
are
you?
here present physically. Fine, and just came on the podium to thank you. You have been a speaker of repute, and I came to know that you addressed recently 6,000 chartered accountants, 700 physically, and I think 5,200 virtually. That's what in Southern India Regional Conference. So it's
Thank
an
you, sir.
honor to have you, sir. And I know how versatile and how innovative you have been. How friends, I would say in the practicing chartered accountants, there are very few who are actually a transformer of the business, who are transforming the whole area of the practice, and who are truly change agent. And for Guru sir, ERP stands for empathy, respect, and passion.
Thank you very much,
sir.
sir.
So thank you very much, sir. And so that's why I came on there. We all are here physically. One last question we'll have, sir, from
Yes, sir.
our esteemed member, and look forward to connect again.
Thank you very much.
Can you see me? Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, it's a very light question. It's not a heavy one. With your experience as a valuer and in valuation, where do you see there is a bubble happening, and where there's an undervaluation in the assets? Bubble in terms of the hysteria created. Do we see the tech companies there's a bubble amount and the valuation is being paid for the, not a genuine valuation, but being the technology hysteria which is happening?
So the bubble will burst, if not today, every other day. I would not call it as burst, but the bubble will change. But the biggest essence, what is there in the valuation of this startup ecosystem is, where is the money coming from? That is what we need to figure out, from where is the money coming from. See, in India, whenever you invest in a startup, suppose I take your investment itself, anybody who will invest first will keep X amount of money in a safe deposits. He'll keep Y amount of money in very stable places like a Tata Motors or a Biocon and Infosys and those type of things. Then you keep some money in gold, and you keep some money in good class of assets like bonds and mutual funds and derivatives and those type of things. Only a small part of your money will go to startups. So if you see any of the asset class, a startup is coming through a VC or a PE. A VC will collect money from 100 people. Now 100 people will give him $200,000 each. So that is how he becomes a VC and he invests. Now when he is putting in this $200,000, that is a very small part of his overall investment. So if it clicks, it clicks. If it doesn't click, it doesn't mind. So in case you are having your personal investment, and generally, I know people in Qatar are very, very wealthy. So if 1 lakh rupees or 1,50,000 rupees goes and you lose it somewhere, you don't mind. It doesn't matter at all. So for an investor who's coming from Eastern Europe, an investor coming from London, an investor coming from US and San Francisco and any of those places, he would have put in $1 million in one of the VC firms, or 200,000 rupees or 500,000 rupees. For him, if it goes, it goes. It doesn't bother. He comes back and puts some more money. So this urge that the smallest part of a personal asset class of a person could get in the largest amount of money, and he does not mind losing the small part. So as long as people are willing to lose this small part, valuations will never come down. And the people who are willing to lose the small parts are increasing day after day, day by day. Just if you see the last 1 year, earlier the partners who are investing in VC, all VCs put together used to be around 1,800 people. In the last 1 year, the number of people who are investing only in India, who are in asset classes of 25 lakh rupees per small AIF and 1 crore rupees for a big AIF has become almost 11,000 investors. And next year, we are looking at 19,000 investors. So there are 19,000 people who don't mind this 1 crore going off. That means as long as the reason is there that the smallest asset class will go into the riskiest asset, and this could become an unicorn, valuations may not be a bubble at all. Yeah, the the companies which are repetitive. If somebody else comes with Zomato, somebody else comes with Dunzo and Swiggy, may not get a valuation. For him, a deep science or a genomic science is required. So innovation will get valuation, but valuation will not come down, at least in the next 5-10 years.
Okay. So I believe you feel technology is at certain higher valuation overall. Like if you see Alibaba now in Nasdaq, it's going for almost a 60% rundown. So earlier everybody was going, even the people like Charlie Munger, they bought the Alibaba share and he has lost 40% immediately. So the valuation expert who is a Charlie Munger, even he could not guess out on the technology stocks. So is India having the overvaluation at current juncture?
So I again told, as Akila started out, valuation is only a perception of the product. So as long as people are willing to lose or take that risk potency with the small class of asset, valuation will not be overvalued. If 10 people step out, 40 people will step in at the same value. So valuation will remain for some time.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The only difficult part in webinars is we don't get a physical gift.
We'll try and create an innovation for this one also, sir.
Yes, over to you, Vignesh.
Thank you, Rakesh, and thank you, C.A. Guru Prasad and Akhila. That was definitely an insightful session, and thanks a lot, sir, for staying awake late in the night. We understand it's late in India, and also for having traveled 800 kilometers. Well, I happen to be in the consulting space, and I do understand the importance of valuation. It is definitely something that is the order of the day, and it is something which relates very much with innovation. So as you see, this the way we've conducted this event is also quite innovative, and we'd like to have innovation in whatever we do. Thank you again, and we hope that we would have you here physically once things get better off. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your opinions, and that was really insightful. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you very much.
As we move on to our next session of the day, we have with us another eminent speaker who will be CA Rajiv Hira. He will be speaking to us on changing landscape of compliance framework. Compliance is something that exists, and has been existing even through innovation and technology. CA Rajiv Hira is a director of RHMC Management Consultants, a high caliber finance professional with an experience of leading roles in private and multinational financial institutions for over 2 decades in the area of technology implementation, risk management, compliance, and also the founder of RHMC Management Consultants. He's actively engaged in the Middle East with large corporates, SMEs in process design and implementation. He's contributed through development of resources, through professional bodies and structured trainings. He has hands-on experience in engaging with regulators in the space of anti-money laundering, counterterrorism financing, connecting the risk management through system, technology, and interface. And lastly, as technology and innovation impacts everything, so does it impact compliance as well. So he's been also working with technology in the space of compliance and regulatory environment. It is indeed with pleasure that I now welcome CA Rajiv Hira. Well, sir, the screen is all yours since you're attending virtually. So let me say the screen is all yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Vignesh. I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Information. Thank you. So I'll go back to, I think so far the session was amazing, and thanks Doha chapter for inviting and picking up all the points. So I can say my previous speakers have given a lot of insights on the points which I'm going to talk about. CATV, Mohandas Pai has very clearly said how the data is becoming the king and the data is becoming important for everyone. And Mr. Gurudas Pai has given Gurudas Prasad has given a very important and eminent statement to me, which states where the money is coming from is becoming very important. And that's where the compliance story or my story comes into play. So I think we can look at how the landscape is changing, especially I can say from a Middle East perspective. There are a lot of things which are moving in a very different tangent. There are a lot of things which we as a professionals or we as working employees in any of the large organization or even the smaller organization has to look for and connect the dots which are becoming bigger. So as we heard, there are a lot of startups are coming in, a lot of IT companies are coming in, which are creating a landscape throughput on the transactions and the data which is being generated. So I'll give you some imaginary stories and some things which are in the pipeline from a regulator perspective, which are bringing up. I'm talking to you right now from a Middle East perspective, but I picked up some of the elements from a country that is Qatar, very specifically, and we'll see how these things are framing it out. It's a very simple statement we have heard from a lot of people and we have seen as part of the Wikipedia or anything which you search. What is a tax? So a simple statement comes, a tax is a compulsory financial charge, which is basically imposed by the government organization and in order to fund the government spending and various public expenditures. So that means we know that when the government is collecting any taxes, which can be a direct tax or indirect tax, the usage or the importance of the taxation is where are we using those funds. But there's one more leeway which is coming out, which says that taxes are also helping us to build a trail of transaction and identify the malified intentions of money launderers. So this is becoming very important. And this part of the world, we have seen how stringent regulators are becoming. When we talk about a central bank, we talk about tax authorities. They're becoming very stringent, and the penalties and the fines and the censures are becoming higher and higher. You must have heard about a lot of financial institutions, especially banks, were penalized for dealing or violating some kind of a sanctions regime or some kind of a money laundering regime. So all those penalties getting imposed in this part of the world, or I'll say globally, is becoming stiffer and stiffer. Now, what it tantamounts to us as a professional and what we should look at when we are defining those as a parameter or those as a framework. Now, there are so many things which comes as part of it. Let me take a very simple examples or simple things, which tells you there are some of the money laundering triggers which are available in the off balance sheet and the balance sheet and the P&L, which are indicators that something is going wrong. I'll come back. Why we need to do this, because that's also most important thing. If you look at unusual off balance sheet items, now I'm not saying that these are by default outside the leg of the legal. There can be red flags or there can be triggers. So what words we are using is trigger. We are not concluding it, but yes, we are giving an indication that there is something which is going wrong. And what I'm talking here, I'm not talking in vain. I'm talking about the regulation from a country perspective, from a region perspective, which is being defined through a FATF. We talk about Financial Action Task Force or the central banks who have adopted those principles. Now, if I look at a simple statement, non-transparent ownership, that means UBO not known, ultimate beneficial owner of the company or the entity which we're talking about, if it is not known, then there is something going wrong. So we heard from the previous speaker, Mr. Guru Prasad, he said in a very different tangent or a different discussion, but the words or the statements are same. It is very important to get the capital, but it is more important becoming now to know from where the money is coming from. So from where the money is coming from is not only the financial aspect, it's also the regulatory aspect, which is becoming important. Ownership by relations or partners of criminals. So here, if you are having or you are dealing with an entity where the ownership is having some kind of a criminal background, either directly or indirectly, also plays an important role. And this becomes an off balance sheet item. And we will look at how these things are triggered and how the regulatory system is pushing us to look at those pointers. Next comes international structure with no apparent commercial, legal, or tax benefit. So a lot of time we have seen in this part of the world where you have a parent company sitting in X jurisdiction and then ultimate parent company is sitting in Y jurisdiction. All those structures has to be questioned for why we have this structure. Is there something which we are trying to help it out? Is there some kind of a family offices you are creating, or is there some kind of a tax benefit you are getting? All those questions has to be answered. Then only you will identify that this is the right place to be. Purchase or sale of companies shares at a price far above or below the estimated value. So one of the things which is talk of the discussion from a regulator perspective also in a startup regime is the money which is being pushed in or the valuation which is pushed in are legitimate or not. This is also one of the aspects which the regulators are looking at. Whether we call it it's a share market or it's a private equity investors, that's also becoming a framework. And they are evaluating through the valuations, through the standard checks of the valuation to see how these are aligned into. Company directors or company or directors are registered in the foreign company service provider address. So you don't have a corporate address in the country from where you're operating into. That also creates some kind of a trigger that why the addresses or the location is sitting outside the country of operation. Information from external sources. Now, this is very important. We have seen maximum tax rates or income tax rates or indirect tax rates, whatever we talk about, are not triggered by the intelligence of the authorities. But yes, there are a lot of these are triggered by the intelligence or the information provided by the competitors. So if you're doing something or the organization doing something different than the right parameter, there is a possibility that your competitors may go and provide the information. And hence it's very important to be on the right side of the compliance in that kind of a framework. Now let me pick up some balance sheet items. Now these are peculiar, which you see in the balance sheet and which can be and should be analyzed. One is the ownership contribution of capital are not supported by the previous tax returns, or any kind of information from a capital induction perspective from where the capital is being inducted. So we have seen in the Middle East market where the foreign investors comes to the country, and there are countries where repatriation is not possible. Now, how the capital is getting repatriated from that country to the country where the investment is coming up is becoming an important question and need to be looked at from a compliance or from a regulatory information perspective. Interest accumulating on loans receivable or loans payable. So anything. So interest is getting accumulated either payable side or receivable side for last maybe 5 years, 10 years, and not even interest servicing is happening. So is this a lined item, or the loan transaction is just a front end of the transaction, but there is something more which need to be looked at. All those elements becomes part and parcel of how the transaction need to be evaluated and looked into. Large cash holdings, which are excessive for the business. So business has maybe a cash inflow and outflow of $100,000 or $200,000 in a day, but whereas you're keeping a cash flow of maybe $10 million or $20 million, is it appropriate? It is aligned to the business model, becomes a question mark and a money laundering trigger also. Now coming to, again, a balance sheet side, we all know and we have seen some of the triggers which are there, which is high rise in turnover or sales. Suddenly you see turnover of the company has jumped in from maybe a few $1 million to multi-million dollars. So that's also is a trigger. High rise in profit margin. Again, the profit margin, which was trending maybe around 3 to 4%, has suddenly jumped into 20% or 30%. So those are triggers which are available and need to be assigned how we can look at it. business ratios. So these are also some of the factors which as a chartered accountant or the profession, we always look at. So one is we heard how the valuation need to be looked at. Now what we are referring here is how the compliance need to be looked at from those triggers or the percentages basis. So these are important. Now, why these are important? Now, I'll say if imagine these authorities, which is one registrar, economic substance regulation, which is being initiated as part of the region and all countries are adopting it. There are few countries which are getting adopted in the 22 beginning, but this is top of the countries and the regulators are very easily looking at. Now, on a broader sense, I will just give a perspective where the economic substance regulation is matching the income versus revenue. If you are a group company and you have a relationship with a parent company which is sitting outside the Qatar or any kind of a country which we are looking at. So that's the talk of economic substance regulation is simple. Are we having adequate resources to earn the amount of money which we are earning? That's what it comes into. Banks are becoming, the normal word we listen from all the people are banks are becoming tougher. I will say banks are becoming cautious. They're asking more questions than they were asking before because they have a lot of data points and they're analyzing those data points by the help of the startup companies which are providing the information. I can tell you right now, banks have tools where you just upload the bank statement and the systems are analyzing the trend and the red flag areas where the transactions are being not aligned to. So these are the level of automation banks are going in. They have moved, rather I will say 10, 20 resources work to an automation system. And hence they are able to ask much more questions than they were asking before. Value-added tax. Again, this is coming up in the countries very soon. So I'm just connecting the dots. If all this information are available to a regulator, which is definitely available, imagine what kind of a compliance checks can come into play. Country by country reporting. Again, this is for the large corporates where if you have a jurisdiction where you are setting up a companies in multiple countries, you have to define in which country, what kind of a revenue and thresholds comes into play. I'll use the terminology economic substance and country by country reporting has a little bit of overlap, but the objectives are very different because country by country reporting is taking care of a larger corporates, whereas economic substance covers up almost 9 activities and it covers even SME or a smallest value of transaction. So that's where it comes into. Customs, what amount of goods are imported, at what value they are imported, and what kind of a transactions are being conducted. Excise, again, this is again a sin tax where 100%, 50% taxes are applied in the various part of the countries in the jurisdiction. Common reporting standards, this is a very basic information where our passport details, our taxation status are being adopted and accepted by the banks to be shared across the globe to the tax jurisdiction or from wherever you come into or wherever passport you hold into. Initially, this information was more on demand basis. Now it is available for the participating countries to pick up the information and look at the data against that. Direct tax authorities. So these are few examples which I'm talking about. Now, what's happening with automation, with artificial intelligence, with data analytics, with sharing of information between the departments and organizations, the information is getting collated, collected, and being analyzed. So I will say, imagine a reconciliation is done for the value of goods imported with the value-added tax or the customs duty you have paid with the bank transactions for which the money is being received or paid. So these are getting connected in a very effective way, and the compliance is becoming more stringent as we talk about. Now, how are we talking that compliance is getting integrated? I'm giving you some examples which we have seen as part of the ecosystem, which is working very effectively. India started with annual information statement. Remember the days when the TDS forms need to be collected, collated, and you provide the data to the income tax authorities that this is the TDS which I have to receive and hence adjust from my income tax. Now that information is readily available. Not only that, the high value transactions which has a trigger of a taxation are also getting captured. Not only that, your travel, whatever travels you have done internationally whatever currencies exchange you have done internationally are getting captured because you have done those transactions through the financial institutions. So these information are getting collated. How it is getting collated? You heard Mr. Mohandas Pai and Aadhaar card was linked from an India perspective, and that's becoming a identifier to a lot of the transactions. Is that kind of a system, or is that kind of a trigger not available with us? It is. We have national IDs. Now, it's only a matter of time when these national IDs are getting connected and the information will be reverse available with you to provide that. Second comes, Middle East banks comply with AML CFT regulations, says Doha. So now this is again, from a compliance and anti-money laundering perspective, there is a very clear indications coming from the regulators itself that you made compliance acceptable or there are stringent actions will be taken. Now, what has happened in Doha, I'm going to talk about in the few slides from now, which will detail it up. Saudi has started e-invoicing. Now, e-invoicing is something very interesting where there are parties in the ecosystem within Saudi who are doing transactions. So if I am invoicing to Mr. A, the credit of input tax will automatically, in the phase manner, will be available to Mr. A going ahead. To make it simple, like in the TDS from an Indian jurisdiction perspective, you see what amount of credit is available with you to be taken for income tax benefit. Similar things are coming up through e-invoicing method. That means you are integrating the system. Once you are integrating the system, you're making that information available with the authorities which you talked about in the previous slides. Hence, you're making it quite viable and quite easily accessible by the authorities. Dubai has already, or you can say UAE has already initiated where customs and VAT is integrated, and Dubai has gone one step ahead where they have generated reports which are readily available on demand by the financial institutions and regulators, which can be used to cross-verify the transactions. Now, this is some aspects which you're talking about, but as we move along, every country in Middle East is looking at automation, paperless, and we are talking about automation, paperless. We need to look at how the workflow ecosystems are assigned into, and hence the compliance is becoming much, much more important to look into. One example I'll just give you, a lot of time we interchangeably use money laundering and terrorist financing, which is the point which is becoming very heavily in the jurisdiction where we are sitting into. Now, money laundering generally involves, or I'll say always involves, the proceeds of illegal activity. That means I must have generated, or the party must have generated the money through illegal resources, which can be by drug trafficking, by child abuse, by pornography, or so many illegal things which are coming into place where the money is being generated illegally. Now, the purpose of money laundering is simple: to clean the money and move the transaction from where it is initiated to where they want to take it forward. So one of the aspects which we look at from a money laundering perspective is it's always an illegal money which gets converted into the good money. Tax abuse or a tax evasion is also illegal. Just to give you a perspective, a lot of time we have a soft corner on the tax planning and tax evasion. We mix it up. There's a very clear difference between planning and evasion. I think we all are chartered accountants, we understand that very clearly. So there is no way we can say that tax evasion is not a money laundering part. It is part of a money laundering aspect. Now, whereas terrorist financing, in this case, the proceeds may or may not be from illegal sources. So that's where the differentiator comes into. We know what happened in the World Trade Center. We have seen the catastrophic effect and the impact of that in the regulatory environment. Surprisingly, the amount of money which was spent was not very high. It was a very small or a few dollars which were used to create such kind of a disastrous thing. And the biggest concern comes from a terrorist financing perspective is money may be generated through the legitimate source. Now, this can be on account of ideology or some kind of a perception people have, and the money is being transferred from the legitimate sources. It is possible that terrorist financing activity happens from a salary account of someone or from a real income or a real business generated by someone, just because how the ideologies comes in. How we can prevent ourselves, that becomes an integral part, because we know the problem, we know the reasons, we know what need to be done, but how we prevent ourselves. Now, this is where I come to the very country specific. Qatar has a clear national anti-money laundering and terrorist financing committee, which is adopted, and they have come up with a new regulation in 2019 itself. The law says law number 20 of 2019. Now, this is a topic which can go for a long, I think it's a larger session, but I'm going to touch across some very important part from the professional perspective, which is covered as part of a DNFBB. I had given some sources of the link, which I'll be sharing the presentation and can be used at a later stage. Now, this government body is taking care of a lot of action plan or a lot of implementation things which are happening from a compliance perspective in a big way. Now, Qatar is a founding member of the Middle East and North Africa Financial Action Task Force. It's also a member of FATF, which is by Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC. Now, if you see, the National Anti-Money Laundering and Terrorism Finance Committee has come up with regulations and the ministerial decision also. I'm going to just take you through a quick snapshot about those decisions, because these are quite important from a compliance perspective and looking at the jurisdiction. Law number 20 of 2019, which is what came up, and there is a ministerial decision number 41 of 219 also came up as part of it. Now, there are supervisory authorities within Qatar. This you should know in which activity you come into part of it, and which are the supervisory authorities, your organization or as a consultant, which comes as part of it. Qatar Central Bank, Qatar Financial Market Authority, Ministry of Justice. If you see from a Ministry of Justice perspective, they have put up lawyer, notaries, and real estate agents as part of a Ministry of Justice. In some countries, these are part of a Ministry of Commerce and Industry, but this is where it is. Legal accountants. So when I say legal accountants, it covers an auditor's framework also. Traders in precious metals and stones, trust and company service provider, these are all part of Ministry of Commerce and Industry. And again, Qatar Financial Central Regulatory Authority, which is part of the framework, and the Regulatory Authority for Charitable Activities. Now, this is important again from a AML or a terrorism financing perspective. We need to be very cautious of the fact which are the non-profit organizations where we can give a charity. It's a very tight controlled subject within this region, and we should try not to deviate it, because the implications can be very difficult to operate into. Now, something which is touching from a profession perspective, which is the law number 20 of 2019 of combating money laundering and terrorism financing. There is a very good terminology which is used where the financial institutions and DNFBPs, which is designated non-banking business professionals, are being included. And there are a lot of actions which are designed and are talked about to be covered as part of it. With a sense of time, I will slip some of the slides because, and maybe we can look at a larger and detailed session with Vignesh and Ilak to see how we can do it more. Just a quick one. There are gatekeepers which were always there. We used to see the bankers being the gatekeepers, fund managers, payment channel, insurance, broking house. These were financial institutions and always were defined as a gatekeepers from an AML CFT perspective. Now they have included DNFBPs, designated non-banking business professionals. And just a simple definition, if you just break out the meaning of DNFBP, it is appoint someone to a specific post, non-financial, which is not a bank or a regulatory kind of activity, but who is into business and profession. So now this is where the definition of DNFBP becomes important and need to be looked at in a much detailed way. Quick snap. Who are the DNFBPs? Real estate agents are the DNFBPs. Whether you conduct a transaction for a sale or purchase does not make a difference. If you are connected with the real estate, you need to do some kind of actions which are important from a regulatory framework perspective and look at how this changing landscape is moving in. Now, real estate agents are no more the people who just say, okay, I'm going to take X dollars from you or a 5% of the commission for what I sell or purchase. They have to look at from where the money is coming in, who are the people who are transacting and how the transaction is happening. Everything becomes part and parcel of the transaction. Precious metal and stone, anyway, this is a high risk business. And anything to be done with the precious metal or stones becomes part of the framework, and the compliance framework is becoming stringent and stringent. It is Qatari Riyal more than 50,000 transaction, but technically speaking, this is just a number. But if I say, if you are a trader in precious metal and stone, you have to apply or deploy a lot of compliance related activities, and which is what we will summarize at the end. Now, this is a large one and which impacts directly to the professional bodies or the consultants who are working in. Authorized notaries, which we know, lawyers, accountants, the word comes very, very clear, and the legal accountant. Now, how the accountants and legal accountants play an important role. From a regulator perspective, they believe if you are an independent accountant, I'm talking about an independent accountant, not an employee, you are providing accounting services of maybe bookkeeping, or you are doing an auditing of accounts. They consider you have a vital information about how the business is doing. The compliance is also getting involved now for the professionals. So professionals are not only taking the money and doing the services, they need to do a lot of due diligence or a lot of transaction analysis. What kind of a business is happening, or is the business happening in the right way or not? Now, what kind of things we are talking about? We're talking about if you are involved in purchase and sale of real estate. What we are talking about, management of customer fund, security or other assets. Management of bank accounts, saving account or security accounts. Organizing contributions for establishment, operation or management of companies or other entities. Now here, contribution for establishment can be giving a seed capital or the seed fund to start the company. Maybe the first capital required is 100,000 Qatari riyals. Are you investing? Are you funding it? And you're getting the money from the client at a later stage. Then also you become part and parcel of the DNFEB. Establishing operation or management of legal person or legal arrangement and sale or purchase of business entities. Merger acquisition activities comes as part of it. Acquisition comes part of it. Providing operational support becomes part of it. So all those aspects becomes part of what we talked about: authorized notaries, lawyers, accountant, legal persons. All these become part and parcel of the execution. Next, a very important part, trust and company service provider. So we become an executing part to do any of these things. Acting as formation agent of legal persons, you are helping companies to be set up. Now, it does not mean you need to be an agent with authority to help them. If you are even handling their emails, if you are even facilitating the transaction to a person or a foreign entity to set up a legal person or a company in Qatar, you become part of it. Acting or arrangement of other person to act as a director, secretary, that means you're giving vital positions from your organization to act on their behalf. Then also you become part of the activity. Providing a registered office. So giving your only office address also becomes and pulls you in the discussion from a DNFEB perspective. Now again, acting or you're acting as a trustee, direct credit fund, or indirectly also you act as a trustee for executing the transactions. Then also DNFPB kicks in, and any kind of a nominee shareholder for another person, that anyway is not allowed. But if you are ultimately hiding the UBO, or you are creating yourself as a nominee shareholder, then also the DNFPB category comes and kicks in. A lot of actions in this part, and this is where one more additional things comes, anything which the council and minister later on tells us. So what we know is what we know, but others can also be included as part of the legislation. What is expected? A straight question. You need to look at a compliance officer. You need to look at the KYC policy, which is know your customer. And there is one more extension which is coming up, which says that KYCC, know your customer's customer also. So it's not only one-sided transaction, you should know who are dealing with your customers also. Now, doing a due diligence measures becomes an important part. Registration in automatic reporting systems for sanction list is also one of the action point which is coming in. Now, sanction lists are the country specific also and people specific also. Now, the biggest, I will say, the zero tolerance which is coming up from the regulator perspective is, if a name is there as a terrorist organization or a terrorist person, and we deal with those sanctioned individuals or the sanctioned corporates, that's a problem at a first stage. It's a no-brainer. We cannot even set up an organization or a relationship with them. But yes, money laundering is a different part, because a lot of time we don't smell till the time transactions have happened. But once the transaction happened, then only you understand, oh, this guy was doing some money laundering activity. Or you have a history. That means you have a negative media alert, or you have other alerts which tells you what need to be done. And the last thing comes, which a Qatar Financial Information Unit is expecting, which is part of the central bank, is reporting the suspicious transaction to be informed to the Financial Information Unit. So these are the 4 factors which are important to be looked at. How you do. So what to do is what we know. How to do. Make sure if you're part of a DNFPB, or you are serving as a part of a DNFPB directly or indirectly, you have internal policies, procedures, and controls to make sure you are not dealing with the people whom the regulators are not expecting us to deal. Make sure your reconciliations between, as we talked about, the customs to VAT to banking are being aligned very clearly. You're not reporting different numbers in different authorities, because that's also a laundering kind of aspect which comes in. Training, important part. Ensure that you have teams who are trained to look at those aspects in a very different way, and an independent review which comes as a part of the overall gambit. We say if you have 7 elements of a customer due diligence, then you are good to go. Looking from identification, identify the people, development of a profile. Now, when we identify a people or a person, we are not only identifying to see whether this person has money or not. We are also looking at what kind of a media alerts that person has, what kind of a sanction alert that person has. Is the person is a politically exposed person, because risks are very different to different category of people. Now, once you know the identity, once you have a KYC or know your customer or your passport copy of the individuals, you look at development of a profile. You see, okay, this gentleman was in salary income, and for last 20 years, I can see he must have earned more than $20 million. And if he is investing $10 million, I'm perfectly fine. But if it's a reverse way, then we need to look at what need to be done. Assessment and grading risk is again becoming an integral part of a profile, where you need to look at acceptance of the risk also. Once you have accepted the risk, the story does not stop. You need to look at monitoring the transactions. Are the transactions within the permissible limits or not? Or are there too many transactions happening which are not in capacity of a person to conduct? That goes into a very different tangent. Investigations and documentation are integral part. So if you have investigated and not documented, or you have not at all documented but investigated, also the regulators are having a pinpoint fingers on those aspects to look at. Call to action, very clear. Create a profile, design a transaction, client visit reports need to be looked at. You need to know the client in a very effective way, what kind of a business they are doing. Are there any kind of a round robin transactions happening? And a risk profiling from an AML perspective. Just to give a very quick snapshot, this is not the comprehensive one, but customer risk can be broken into very different parts. One is, do you know the beneficial owners and what kind of a profile they carry? What kind of a geographies they come from? What kind of a product and services you are offering? Let's say example, if I am doing a company formation for a client, it's a high risk business in comparison to I am providing an advisory on a petty matter or on a cost saving matter. So if I am providing an advisory on a cost saving matter, I will not consider it to be a high risk product. But if I am doing a company formation, then definitely it becomes a high risk product, and hence I need to do something more. Similarly, from a gold and diamond business perspective, if you are doing a rough diamond transaction, it is much more higher risk than a polished diamond, which is Kimberly certified. So these are comparative statements. We are not saying that a Kimberly certificate diamond is completely aligned. This is less riskier than the rough diamond is what we are referring to. Purpose of account. Why someone wants to set up a company in a jurisdiction? Is it for a transaction which need to be done, or there's a real business which is coming up? So all that becomes a part of a risk metrics. What kind of a volume they are doing, what kind of history the company has of the setup. So these are all some of the risk factors which comes and which has to be aligned into low risk, high risk, or medium risk from a compliance perspective. Now, money laundering and CTF is becoming a serious affair in this part of the jurisdiction, and hence there are systems which are coming up. I'll give an overview of one system, which is Intel Wings. This is where my technology space comes as part of it. So this is you can say a 360-degree view of how the AML CFT compliance can be looked at. This is just the last slide from me. One starts with a transaction monitoring rules, how you want the transactions to be monitored, what kind of AML scenarios you want to see. Example, you want to evaluate every transaction which is more than 50,000 Qatari riyals or more than 1 million Qatari riyals, depending on the business which you operate into. A risk-based segment and threshold tuning, which is again a powerful simulator where the approval goes to a different authority level as the transaction goes into. Again, a transaction and customer relationship pattern analysis, what kind of a transaction client is doing. Example, let's say if a client was doing a transaction of 10,000 Qatari riyals for last 1 year, and suddenly we found a spike of maybe $10 million transaction coming up, it gives an alert to look at how those transactions need to be analyzed. There are a lot of reports and MIS which our regulators are expecting. So these reports can be automated through the process, and in some cases where the regulators are expecting online submission and automated real-time submissions can also be part of it. Watch list, again, this is the biggest threat, I will say, or biggest concern which everyone has. If you're dealing with a client or I'll say supplier and client both ways, you need to understand whether any kind of adverse media watch or a sanction list or a politically exposed person is there or not. If it is, then you need to align and look at what kind of a risk mitigation you're working in. So there is a real-time search results which are available, which will tell you Mr. X you are dealing with is already being identified as a criminal or offender in X country. You need to be clear for. And last comes is a workflow and RFIs, or you can say request for information, which can be generated and a workflow can be created for professionals and for the senior ups in the organization to see how the compliance can be looked at. So that's what it is from me, Vignesh. Happy to pick up any questions which are there. I think it's love to be in person with you very soon. Let me stop share screen.
Thank you very much, CA Rajiv Meera, for such an insightful session. It was really very informative. I would like to request if there's any one questions. We can take only one questions.
I think everyone is feeling hungry now, looks like.
Yeah, because we are running out of time also. So anyway, so I will request CA Devki to come on and give vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh. Dear members, I know that we are running late. Dear members, we know that we are running late, so I'm not coming in between your dinner. So I will just try to wrap up the session very quickly. Honorable Chief Guest, respected dignitaries, my dear members and ever smiling chairperson, CA Nila Bhatt, and our most valued invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this first ever physical event after COVID-19. On behalf of entire Executive Committee of Doha chapter of ICI, I would like to extend heartfelt thanks to our chief guest, Mr. Jafar, President, Indian Business and Professional Council, for the gracing the occasion today. A big thanks to CATV Mohandas Pai sir for your special address and providing insights on India, a startup nation. After listening your entire speech, sir, I can only say that the way in Bangalore startups companies are coming up and digitalization are happening, I guess Buffalo is nowhere in the race. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for CA Guru Prasad M and his colleague Achita for upgrading our knowledge on value of valuation and valuation of assets. For me, the takeaway from your session is, sir, Arogya Setu. You mentioned that this Arogya Setu served the users base of 1.38 billion within the span of months. So this is the power of technology. Further, we are grateful to CA Rajiv Hira, sir, for enlightening us on changing landscape of compliance framework and highlighting on off-balance sheet and usual balance sheet and PLN items. We are all inspired by your great words, sir. I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to Radisson Management for providing this facility amidst difficult times and giving utmost weightage. In my thanks to our photographer and also to media partners and our sincere thanks to annual gold sponsor and silver sponsor Creston as BP Chartered Accountants and Oracle for providing their support to carry out the chapter activities. Dear members, as I always used to say, whether we meet virtually or physically, you are the backbone of the chapter. I would like to thank each members of Doha chapter of ICI and past chairmen for providing their unconditional love towards the EXCOM. Well, last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, and even an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago, or I would say even months ago. It requires planning and bird's eye view for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated executive committee members and subcommittee members. A big thank to entire team for their support. We thank you all for being with us this evening. It's been a great pleasure. Sumter's dinner is waiting for you along with Jain food also. Request everyone to maintain the social distancing and follow the COVID-19 protocols during the dinner. Thanks once again. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.